It's a good question, and it brought me to a stop for a long time. I have a short little nutshell definition, and that is that a ballad is a song set to a slow tempo that deals with themes of love and loss. Already I can hear people on YouTube or wherever saying, oh, I have another idea what a ballad is. And that's a song that tells a story. So that is a type of ballad, and that's one that's been around since the Middle Ages. But that's a type that's largely died out. I would say it had its last hurrah in the 1960s with the folk revival movement. But today, we know a ballad is pretty much like a slow love song or a slow sad song or something like that. And so that's what a ballad is for us. But having said that, it's a little tricky because this morning, to get ready for the interview, I was listening to some ballads, and I listened to Barry Manilow, Dolly Parton, Motley Crue, and Drake. And already I can see some people are like, what? Because what I just described are pop, country, rock, and hip hop. And there are ballads in each one of those genres. So that's a little confusing because you have a hip hop genre and a rock ballad, two very different genres, but they all hold to what I was saying at the outset. There are songs set to slow tempos, and there are songs that deal with love and loss. And let's face it, for a lot of hip hop, you don't have a lot of love songs, of a certain type. So ballads are where hip hop musicians get to do that. And what's interesting about that is then you get to hear ballads done in all sorts of ways. You get like a little steel guitar in a country song. You get Barry Manilow, all his confectionery pop stuff, and then you get some roaring rock chords in Motley Crue. So ballads take many different shapes, which is also another reason I had a hard time coming up with that definition. But it's that basic idea of what that a ballad is as a song, and then you can apply it across different genres. I think listeners love ballads because they offer an opportunity we don't have much in society today, and that is a moment for emotional reflection. It's quite rare that you get a time to take 3 or 4 minutes, however long a ballad is, and just to think about an experience in your life that this song may touch upon, or just to feel sorrow if it's a sad song, or to feel something romantic if it's a love song. And we rarely get those moments anymore. 3 or 4 minutes in all our lives is a considerable amount of time. But if you just turn on the song for that amount of time, you can kind of disappear into these feelings and deal with them and enjoy them or come to terms with them, whatever the feeling is. And I think that's why they're so valuable today. Yeah, I would say the big change is that the songs got bigger. For both the musical history I looked at and also the history of emotions, which I looked at, I said it's like the songs have like this, they're part of this musical and emotional crescendo, if you will. I started listening to ballads, I've been listening to what you could call ballads since the late 19th century, but I pick up with them with Elvis in the 1950s. And when you listen to a lot of pop ballads then, they're kind of very like a Nat King Cole song. They're rather soft, they're kind of lush, but they're soft and pleasant. But if you would have given people in the 1950s Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You to listen to, they would have been startled because they would have had no idea what this song was. The Whitney builds to this amazing, loud climax. It's all passion and all that. That would have struck 1950s listeners as really odd. But if you look at the history of ballad, it was always going that way. In the 1960s, you start getting these more heartfelt, deep emotions and soul ballads. And then in the 1970s with power ballads, that's where you get this constant escalation, what I call an emotional adrenaline rush. And we're quite accustomed to that now. Today, in 2017, we love our ballads to be big. And that's what we want. We kind of want this adrenaline rush quality to them. We just want to get the sensation of emotion more than feeling like a particular experience of loss or something like that. And I think that's the biggest musical change, just to these bigger, more emphatic type of songs. There are exceptions, like a lot of ballads done by indie bands. They tend to be much more quiet and much more introspective. But your average pop ballad is going to be on the big side, for sure. Well, I was getting back to my idea of an emotional and musical crescendo. The emotions also get bigger and bigger as well. In the 1950s, you might be asked to feel sadness in some ways, but it's going to be kind of a demure sadness, if you will, kind of a comfortable sadness. But by the time you get to Aretha Franklin in the 1960s with her soul ballads, it's going to be a deep, painful sadness. And so there's that quality to it. But again, getting this idea with the songs that get bigger, the emotions just get bigger, the scope of the emotions and the level of emotional intensity gets bigger. With power ballads, which you could go back to Barry Manilow in the 1970s, Motley Crue in the 1980s, Whitney Houston in the 1990s and beyond, those songs are all about creating like this, they just stir these emotions. I said it's like a charged cloud of emotions where you have so many different feelings going at one time. And that's what's really interesting for me, because those songs aren't even really about one emotion anymore. It's just about kind of this emotional frenzy and intensity. And we find that really beguiling and interesting and moving today. So that's what I've, looking back at 70 years of ballads, I would say that's the biggest change to me when it comes in regards to the emotional qualities of the songs.